Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to Inspire Me Forward. We're on our 11th episode. I cannot believe this. This is the end of 5 months. Next month, we're going into our half-year anniversary. So, wow, I am always so grateful and so inspired by everyone. But just when we follow our heart, it just such amazing things happen and such amazing people come to us and are willing to share that space with us. So I offer a second of gratitude just to everyone that has come before and everybody who comes after, and to Fotini Chandrika for being here today. And Fotini, I'm going to give you a few minutes to say hello, and then I'll come back and do a little bit and go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. So I also am very grateful to be here and very grateful to have been inspired by the guests before me and certainly the ones that will come after me. What a great platform for us to share and be inspired by one another. So I'm really grateful to you, Linda, for uh, creating this incredible space as you do so well. And yeah, I'm just really grateful to be here. So my name's Fotini Chandrika, as Linda mentioned, and I'm here from Loretto, Ontario, Canada, where I am the steward of 4 horses at Red Barn Wellness Farm and Awaken with Horses International. I am a family woman, a homemaker, a homesteader, and I consider myself a warrior woman in many ways. Something I don't share really often is about my life and sort of my background before stepping into this incredible work helping others. And I've been invited today to do that. So I'm showing up fully as myself and kind of putting aside my practice and my business and all of those things and just showing up as me and with an open heart and here to share a little bit of my story, and hopefully that can inspire someone here today.
Awesome. Thank you. And you said they're just showing up, and I always go back to the words, and I know I've mentioned it before, but Buffy Sainte-Marie, singer, songwriter, indigenous woman from Canada, that in an interview with her once, I heard her say, when she was asked about her audience and people liking her music, and she simply said, my job is to show up. My job is to go on stage, to speak my words, sing my songs. This is me paraphrasing, but just to show up and be authentic. And I always go back to those words because that's the best us we can be, isn't it? Isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting, Linda, because it takes so much unlearning and reprogramming to allow ourselves to show up that way. So
Yes.
for me, on my personal journey, this is another step on that path of allowing myself to fully show up. So thanks for the
Absolutely.
invitation.
Oh, absolutely. And in our sort of pre-conversation, I always have a pre-conversation with folks just to flesh out what they want to talk about and all that, and just to have some nice chat. And you and I had talked about that leaping muscle
Yeah.
and that leap of faith muscle. And I thought it was really interesting that, and I keep hearing it, and I'm starting to see uh, through lines, so to speak, and trend. I hate to use the word trends; it's so business, but those through lines, when we've done this number of interviews now and just conversations, that we're starting to see those through lines, and that we don't just make one leap of faith, we make constant ones, and some hold more weight, some hold a little more risk for us, some hold less. But it's interesting to think about, and I'm so interested to hear you share this part of your journey, that thinking about that leaps of faith, or that leaping muscle, and does it get easier? And that. So I'm interested just to hear that part of it and hear where it comes out in that, because it's really interesting to hear people talk about that and that
Yeah.
muscle, so to speak.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I have been reflecting a lot after our pre-conversation and just, in not really like preparing for this call per se, but like sitting with and letting simmer that pre-conversation to show up for this call. And I thought about that muscle and I thought, man, I thought I had some muscles, but like, muscles, farm girl. But that muscle is a strong one because I'm looking back at all the leaps of faith. And you and I in the pre-conversation talked about one of the most difficult ones for me, which may end up coming out in this call, probably will, about my mom when I was 15. Um, and I realized, like, wow, at such a young age to be in such a at such a difficult crossroads, to have to make this kind of a decision
Yeah.
and to choose the path of my heart and not go with what I maybe should do, but to listen to my heart and do what I know I needed to do, which was so difficult. And then, like, the hundreds of leaps of faith that have followed that were also really difficult ones, but man, it's a muscle for sure.
Yeah.
And I do feel like it maybe not gets easier, but it's not as heavy to lift anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's still a
Mhm.
difficult decision, but you lift it because you know that, this is the muscle that you're called to lift. So if that makes
Interesting.
any
Yeah.
sense. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's been incredible. It really has been. And
Mhm.
that muscle has definitely done its work.
Absolutely. And it is that reflection of looking back. I sat with one of our future speakers yesterday, and we just had an hour and a half conversation, and just looking back and going, oh, yeah, there were a lot of leaps of faith and nudges from the universe, and sometimes we have to take that reflect time to reflect on that, to go, hey, you know,
Yeah.
I did take those leaps, and yeah, absolutely.
And it's so interesting because we're so used to, um, like, we're so used to having to, achieve something or accomplish
Mhm.
something. Like, it's kind of in the programming here in the Western modern day
Sure.
society that the more we kind of achieve and produce, and the more value we have, right? And I see it a lot in the equestrian world too.
Mhm.
The ribbons and the, performance, and that kind of gives the horse, the value, right? I don't see it that way, but I see that a lot.
Yeah,
And I feel like obviously it's a conditioning that we've all been privy to just by being here on the planet at this time, in Western society. But
sure.
some of my most recent leaps of faith have included, like, giving myself permission to rest.
Mhm.
as as she makes her
Oh,
way into the
I told
call
you
here, there
she'd
she
show
is,
up.
nice
There she
big
is.
stretch. Giving myself permission to actually rest and reflect on this stuff.
Yeah,
And I wanted, now that Gigi's made her way into the call, I'd love to introduce her since she'll be here with
sure.
us. This is Godiva Grace, and she is from Standard Poodles in Mead. She came to us a month ago, though she was energetically finding us before then. And she has been a huge teacher and carries so much wisdom. She has quite a history. And actually, welcoming her into our life was a leap of faith because we had
Sure.
just lost our beloved dog to a tragic accident, 4 months before
Yeah.
bringing her home, and
Yeah.
we weren't sure we were ready, but all the signs were there from the universe, and here she
There
is,
she is.
and
And she
she's
young?
amazing.
How old is
She's
she?
almost 5.
She's almost 5.
So she was
Well,
bred at a puppy mill. She was
mhm.
a
Yeah.
breeding dam, and she was constantly being bred and bred and
Yeah.
bred. And yeah, so when they got her, she was like pooping wood chips, and she had
Yeah.
wood chips all matted in her paws. Like, she
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
starved and all these
Yeah.
things. And but anyway, she's here. She's enjoying
She
life
landed
on the
safely.
farm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
diva all the way. But lots of teachings for us, my whole family. So,
More
but I
teachings.
have
Excellent.
found
Yeah.
animals to be a huge source of inspiration and guidance for a lot of my leaps of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, they really have sort of inspired me to follow the heart and be like, this is definitely a direction I have to go. So when I'm standing at
Mhm.
a crossroads, and then, the animals whisper, it's like, this way. I'm like, okay, I know when I hear the animals that it's my heart. So that's the direction to go.
Yeah. They turn around and point us back at ourselves and our heart, don't they?
Oh, they sure do.
Yeah.
They sure do.
Well, I'm going to give you the floor for a bit. You've entitled this, every guest I have entitles their own their own conversation. So with my toddler teachers, I will give the floor to you for a bit.
Awesome. So I titled this My Toddler Teachers because my son sort of brought me into this incredible journey of leaping into faith. And as I mentioned earlier, like there were many, many leaps before then, but this was the one that kind of stood out in sitting with what I really wanted to share today. And so basically, I've loved horses my whole life, and I grew up in the city, so I didn't really have a lot of experience or exposure to horses. But I knew that they were calling me. So in 2002, I had a health crisis slash catalyst because I love to look at crisis as opportunity, and it was definitely a very difficult time for me, but it was a catalyst to a whole new life. So I'm forever grateful for what I went through with my health. And so anyway, in 2002, during this health catalyst, I decided that I needed to explore this call to horses more. And so I did, and I weaved my way in and out of barns and felt into the space. I'm a highly, highly sensitive person, so everything that I experience I seem to feel it a lot deeper and a lot more. And something since I was a child that was frowned upon because things weren't as easy with me because I was so sensitive. So it was like I was the you're too sensitive, you're too much, you're too this, you're too that child. And and sure I was, but it actually was and is my greatest gift. So when I started weaving my way in and out of barns, I started really realizing that like what I was experiencing and what I was feeling from the horses was very aligned. There was like this kind of feeling of not fitting in the box, right? And I was feeling that from a lot of the horses that were having their own health issues in the barns and being in the box stalls and experiencing this kind of confinement that really is really far from natural to who they are. So I started realizing that a lot of what I believed about myself or what I had experienced in society and in the institutions of school and this, kind of thing that most of us experience in the Western world, I realized that I was very much the same. Like I was not fitting into this box that was before me, and that I had to find a way to recreate that for myself. Otherwise, I don't know if I was going to survive, society being the sensitive person that I am and was, especially at that time, because I didn't really know how to harness the gift. So it was like this sort of this sensitivity combined with years of trauma and not really having much guidance other than my own heart. It was and the animals, like it was really difficult to sort of find, okay, I get this, but like how am I going to walk with this to a better way and to wellness, right? So um so this continued, like this going in and out of barns, and I volunteered at a couple of barns, and I worked at a thoroughbred breeding farm, and did different things with the horses, but still wasn't quite sure of what that path was going to look like, and it certainly didn't really feel good in most of the places where I was, unfortunately. So fast forward to 2007. At this point, I'm feeling much better. I had gone down the path of natural healing, so I was into all kinds of holistic wellness paths and remedies and awareness. And I was working at a law firm in Toronto, and was getting paid very well. And I was a paralegal law clerk and had well paid salary. I had benefits and all of these things laid out for me on this career path that I did enjoy. Like I did enjoy the work, but then I found out that I was pregnant, and very excited about that. I was, my husband and I were thrilled after quite a fertility journey, and so then all of a sudden I was faced with this other leap of faith where I was like, okay, we were living in Bolton, Ontario. I was working in Toronto. I didn't want to drop my son off at daycare at 7 in the morning and pick him up at 6. Like that just wasn't the life that I envisioned for raising my child. So I decided to leave my career as a law clerk and start a new career in real estate. And for anyone who knows real estate, it's very much, you have to be very strategic in trying to build this business because it's all commission based. So it was a humongous leap of faith, um, to leave, a comfortable, stable salary with pension and benefits to step into this unknown world of, commission based, no benefits, no pensions, very free range type of career. So I did it. I, birthed my beautiful boy, and in 2008, and uh, you know, was the vessel for this incredible, brilliant soul. And he unknowingly was going to lead the way for much of my journey, and continues to be a great guide and teacher for me now at 15, almost 15 years old. So anyway, it's so interesting, like piecing this all together and seeing the images that are popping up in my mind's eye as I'm sharing the story. But so I birthed him. I was the vessel for his entry into this world, and everything just changed so much. So as Kevin, my husband, would come home from work, I would go out and I'd knock on doors and just let people know about my real estate business and my services. And then I'd come back home and nurse my son. And so it was a bit of a juggle, a lot of a juggle, to for my husband and I to raise our son Tyler on our own without babysitters or nannies or daycares. But we did it, and we just passed the baton back and forth. Okay, you're home, I'm going out. Like, you're home, I'm going out. And so when Tyler was about 2, something really special happened. We used to watch this show called Dreamer. It's a movie. It's about a racehorse. It's got Dakota Fanning and Kurt Russell in it. And we used to watch it like every night. It was like our cuddle time kind of movie before everyone turned in for the night. And um, and simultaneously, a neighbor of ours had a mare that was in foal. And I was so excited to hear this. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like a child, you have a mare in foal. Like, this is so exciting. And she said, well, if you want, I can reach out to you when she drops the foal. And I was like, would you really? And she was like, yeah. And this was like a dream come true, because it wasn't an equestrian facility. It was just like down home country farm, where, she had a couple of mares in foal and didn't really do a whole lot with her horses, which I kind of liked. Like, it was more just a place for them to be. So sure enough, on April Fool's Day, we get this message that she dropped her foal. So off we go, son in tow, in the car seat. We go to the farm, and we meet this miraculous little paint pony. And he didn't have a name, so we just kind of like spent time with him and pat him, and it was so amazing. Like, it was just like witnessing a miracle. I had never other I mean, I saw a lot of foals being born at the thoroughbred racing or breeding facility, but it was so different because the environment was so sterile there. Like, we had to wear like gowns and boot covers and everything going into the stalls. We're not allowed to touch, goodness, you're not allowed to touch any foals. So anyway, it was very, very different, like the freedom we had. And she said, oh yeah, you guys can come anytime. Even if I'm not here, you're welcome to come down the driveway and spend time with the horses. And this was like, oh my gosh, what a gift. So we did. We spent a lot of time with this little foal and his mom, Misty, and got to know him. And we were even there for his first vet visit. So she left us to take care of that. And so we were there. She wasn't even there. We were there, and we held him while he got his first needles and all that stuff that they do for the first visit. So anyway, about 6 months later, 6 or 7 months later after he was born, we went to the farm for a visit, and we saw the woman who owned the farm in the round pen with the horse, and there was a couple standing outside the round pen, and they were kind of watching him move in the round pen, and I knew what this was. Like, I had seen this before. Like, I knew what was going on. They were probably looking to purchase him, right? So I could just tell by like how they were looking at him. And again, I'm so sensitive, so I could like feel the energy, and I knew that he was likely going to be rehomed. Just to backstep a little bit, my son is actually the one who named this horse. So my son named him Snickers. And he named him Snickers, and that was about maybe 2 weeks after he was born. And the woman gave us the opportunity to name him. And my son says, Snickers. And I said, okay, Snickers it is. So so anyway, so that was his name. And so they were in the round pen with Snickers, watching him and watching him move. Um and so we left. We could tell, like, she kind of gave us the look, like when we drove up, that it wasn't a good time. So we just kind of turned around and we left, and we were all just completely quiet. And it was about a week later, we were laying there watching Dreamer, and Tyler, my son, who was like, I guess 2.5 or something at the time, he said, Mama, when are we going to get our own horse? And I was like, I don't know. I said, the fencing's not ready. And he said, named Snickers. And I was like, and I looked at my husband, and it was like 9:30 at night. And I was like, you're right. When are we going to get our own horse named Snickers? And I got on the phone with the woman right in that moment. And I said, I'm so sorry. I know it's a little bit late. I said, but I think we need to talk. And she was like, I've been waiting for this call from you. And she knew. And I said, we'd like to provide a home for Snickers. And she was like, I knew he was your horse from the moment he was born, she said, but I was just waiting for you guys to realize it. And I mean, I kind of knew he was our horse, but we just weren't ready. Like, I was green. I mean, other than working in and out of barns, doing mostly like farm labor, I wasn't really experienced hands-on, like with horses, especially a horse who was a foal, or at that time he was a weanling. So I mean, any horse person knows that, like, this is working from like the ground up, right? Like, this is, and if you're green and they're green, you got a whole lot of green going on. So we took the leap of faith, and we were like, we're going to do this. There was kind of no other choice. Like, it just, you could feel it, that it was meant to be. Very similar with how Godiva came into our life. Like, it was almost like there wasn't really a choice. Like, this was being called, and we had to step in that direction. So we had to board him at first, because we didn't have fencing. We weren't prepared for bringing him home. So we boarded him, and right away it started, like, the whole insight to, like, this isn't meant for him. This isn't meant for him. This isn't meant for him. So 12 years later, he's still here on the farm, after many leaps of faith that we've taken together. And he's had really no, like, formal training, because it just never felt right. I'd have different trainers out to work with him, and he'd look at me, and I'd be like, oh, okay, we're not doing this. Okay, we're not doing this. And I mean, he's full of spirit. So when he was 7, we actually had a renaming ceremony where he was renamed Spirit. It's what he wanted. So he's now named Spirit. And I mean, this horse is full of spirit, and he always has been. And he would rear, like, right in front of me, and it would just, he'd be right there rearing, and he's never been broken. Like, he's never been confined to, like, the boxes of the equestrian world, and the equestrian society. So it's been really interesting raising Spirit, or maybe he's raising us. It's been really interesting, because through all of the different stages of this horse's life so far, he's presented me with so much insight that has been reflective of my parenting journey. So at the time, Tyler was a toddler, Spirit was a toddler. Now we've gone through, like, the teenager phase with Spirit, and my son is a teenager now. So it's been really interesting, the lessons that I've learned from Spirit on how to raise a young boy out of the box, and let him be who he is, without breaking his spirit, without confining him, without closing him in to what society expects from him. And it's been really very much the same with the horse Spirit, because we've gone through farriers, man, like left, right, and center, because Spirit has his own way, and he has certain things that he expects from a farrier, and he won't let anyone pick up his feet if they're not present. So we've gone through, I think, 4 or 5 farriers. We have an amazing farrier now. She really understands him, and she's willing to work with him, with who he is, instead of saying, no, it's got to be this way. And if it's not this way, go deal with your horse and bring him back so he'll listen to me. right? And this farrier is like, no, we're going to do it his way. Like, he wants a break, let's give him a break. Or he wants to start with the back feet, let's start with the back feet. Like, it's incredible when we actually listen to our young teachers, when we actually listen to like their wisdom, how much we can learn or maybe unlearn about ourselves. Because I do believe that we have been through so much harsh conditioning and harsh programming through the institutions and through society and through subliminal messages from multimedia and different sources, that we're really forgetting like what it's like to actually grow as nature intended us to grow.
Mhm. Yeah. What can you speak of? You speak of how spirit taught you so much about raising Tyler sort of out of the box. What has Tyler taught you about living out of the box?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a big one. So raising Tyler has taught me so much about like the institutions and being an advocate and speaking up for him and not allowing the institution's idea of what a child needs to be like um, influence how I raise my child. And it's been challenging
Yeah.
because they've wanted to take us down the path of like testing him for autism, or they've wanted to take us down the path of does he have ADHD, does he have these different things, and I've been his advocate to say like, let's give him a chance to grow. Like, he's 4, he's 5, like, can we give him a chance to grow?
Yeah.
And sure enough, like a lot of the things that the schools didn't find maybe acceptable about him, he has grown from, without intervention.
Yeah.
Right. And same with Spirit, the horse. Like, a lot of the things that weren't acceptable to trainers or to farriers, he's grown out of, there's a great mystery to how nature intends us to grow. And I think that there's way too much intervention um, from outside sources that don't really allow that. So Tyler has taught me so much about being out of the box, because he has helped me through my advocacy for him sort
Yeah.
of reparent my own self and give my
Mm.
own self permission to be sensitive, and give my own self permission to not necessarily see things as others see them,
Yeah.
right? Because I've been advocating for him not seeing things the way others see them, or for him not being maybe the cookie cutter school child, right? Like, he is
Mhm.
very sensitive and he is a feeler. But at the same time, he has been a musician since he's been 3 years old. He's his sensitivity, he's harnessed that as such a gift, to be in touch with music. I mean, this
Mhm.
young man can hear something once and he's on the piano playing it,
Nice.
because his spirit has never been broken. He's never been turned off or desensitized to his gifts.
Mm.
And I feel like in the institutions, a lot of us are. We're desensitized and moved away from what's innate to us.
It's interesting you say that, because what I've heard through all of our conversation, sorry, the lawnmower's outside. I had to jump
Well,
up
that's
and close
okay.
the door. So every Tuesday at the same time.
Of course it is.
It's inevitable. What I'm hearing from, again, another through line is that people have anchors in childhood.
Mm.
I talked to somebody the other week that it was daydreaming. For myself, it was dancing, and it was just a free, not dancing in school or anything, just dancing with scarves around, just dancing. It was a freedom in that. And then we're taught to not do that. Don't daydream. Stop daydreaming. And what I hear, what you were talking about, is that sensitivity, and then it became too sensitive, too sensitive.
Yeah.
What and that's what I sort of hearing here, is that sensitivity was like that anchor
Yeah.
for you,
Yeah.
and now coming back to it, But I love what you're saying is that it sounds like you're raising Spirit and Tyler in a way, or allowing, not raising, maybe
Yeah,
allowing
yeah.
them to grow in a way that their anchors aren't being pushed away. Their anchors are being encouraged to develop. And I don't know if you could speak to that a bit, just that
I love
it's,
that. And what comes to me when I'm hearing you say that is my own anchors are being nurtured too.
mhm,
So in nurturing their anchors and in encouraging their anchors to remain what they are through their innate being,
mhm,
it's actually reminding me what mine are.
yes,
Right. So
yeah,
it's been incredible. And I guess that's where the whole my toddler teachers come from, is that yes, we loosely say, and I'll loosely say raising them, but it's true. It's more like holding space for their growth, right?
yeah,
And I feel like in turn, it's been very much the same with them holding space for mine, right? And it's
mhm,
like the exact challenges will happen in my caregiving of my young horse and my son. The exact challenge will happen at the exact time that I need that lesson,
of course. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it's like, okay, here we go, we're learning about this now,
yeah,
right? Or we're learning about this now. And this gift of sensitivity, like it's what has always anchored me to the earth, to
mm,
my place here in the earth and to the physical earth. Like I remember one time I was going through a very difficult time as a young child, and I said to my mother, just take me to the earth, take me to the earth. And she said, well,
mm,
okay, where do you want to go? I said, take me to the park, take me somewhere with dirt. And I remember digging my hands. We went to High Park in
wow, yeah,
Toronto,
yeah,
and I was digging my hands in the earth. I just ran into the forest and I started digging my hands into the earth like an animal. And the other thing,
mm,
which we are really, and the other thing that was a huge anchor was actually dogs. I used to
mm,
drag my parents as a young child to the pet stores to let me see the puppies back when puppies were still in pet stores, and thank goodness they're not anymore. Um, and also, as I was growing and I was, on and off the streets of Toronto as a teenager, after a huge leap of faith of leaving my mother at the age of 15 to go out and do it alone, the Humane Society became my connection with dogs. So I would
mhm,
go and I would be with the dogs at the Humane Society. I would sing to them. I would read them books. I remember one Christmas I went and spent with the dogs at the Humane Society. It was an incredible,
wow,
incredible connection to myself was through dogs.
yeah,
Horses were a different connection. They were more of a spiritual connection, something I saw like in my mind's eye. I could see them running, and it would always make me feel this sense of freedom that was there
yeah,
somewhere, you
yeah,
know. Uh, and and I know now what that feels like, but it took
mhm.
many years of unprogramming and unlearning to remember what it feels like to be free.
Exactly. Yeah, the freedom is the word that comes up so often there. It's just that
Yeah.
freedom. When you've taken a leap of faith, and you've spoken of many, and
Oh,
what
so
did
many.
it what did it feel like in your body? Was there was it a similar feeling each
Mm,
time, that when you said, like, or when you recognize, like with spirits, like, oh, yes, yes, or any of those leaps? What was that feeling for you?
such a great question. Um, the word that I want to use for it, which is almost like a label, but it's interesting that this is what comes up, is I almost feel like anxiety.
Hmm.
So what I've learned about anxiety, which is something that I've lived with for many, many, many years, and I'm friends with anxiety now. But what I've learned, because it wasn't always friendly, it
Hmm.
was oftentimes it was labeled as something that's terribly wrong with you, and you need to be
Yeah,
medicated, and you need
yeah,
to feel better. But what I've learned about anxiety is it's been a signal for my body to tell me that I'm not in alignment
yes,
and it's time to take this other step, or sometimes it's like the step is already there, but I may not know it yet, but my body's picking up on it. So energetically, it's known that there is a leap of faith about to happen, but I may not know it yet. Do you know what I mean? Like I may not
yeah,
know it in my mind yet, but my body knows.
yeah.
And so that's kind of what it has felt like for me, is sort of this like anxious feeling that like there's a huge expansion about to happen. And
Hmm.
another word that comes up for me around leaps of faith is the contraction. So
Oh,
that kind
okay.
of feeling of like going into the cocoon before that opening and that expansion that happens when that
Mm,
leap is taken.
yeah,
So yeah, it's and if I describe the feeling, what I would describe as anxiety, because I think that might be different for everybody.
sure, for
It's
sure.
like a heart racing, kind of like fingers tingling,
Yep,
butterflies in the tummy
yeah,
kind of feeling. When that leap of faith is about to happen, and
sure.
then there's like the integration of it, like once the leap is taken, it's kind of like, okay, let's land, let's
Uh-huh.
integrate, and then rebalance and find that balance again in the shift.
Oh, I love that. That's all like, so you're talking about it, that contraction and then the expansion, landing, integrating, and then rebalancing. It's a
Yeah,
whole, I love that.
yeah, that's
It's
what
not
I
just
see it
one
as,
feeling, it's
because
a process.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful way to sort of put all those steps together. And I'm not sure it's not the same for everyone, but there's
yeah,
something of all of that in every leap of faith that everybody takes.
I feel like there just
Yeah,
might be. I mean, at
yeah.
this point in my work, I've been working with people, particularly highly sensitive folks, for the past 10 years, and
Hmm.
and I have noticed that is sort of a bit of a pattern that um, that leaps of faith take. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm. I love
yeah.
that. I love that. It's something we haven't really talked about on this
Oh,
so
cool.
far
Yeah,
is that the stages of it.
yeah.
The
And I
stages of
feel that
faith.
it is a
Yeah.
rich piece, because now that you mention
Hmm.
it, like it makes me kind of reflect a little bit on like, what does it look like when you don't allow those pieces to come together?
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's like that's been a big part of my path, because I was independent at such a young age, and that was a
Yeah.
huge leap of faith. And then all of the leaps of faith that followed, oftentimes big ones that really shook things up. And one of the biggest leaps of faith among those leaps of faith was giving myself permission to embrace all of the stages of the leap.
Say that
You know
again.
what I mean? Because we're so conditioned to just keep going,
Yeah.
just get over it, move
Yes.
forward, move on. We're conditioned to like all these
Mhm.
things that are lending themselves towards movement and action, but we're not
Mm.
really taught a lot about like non-action and like
Yeah.
just being with what's happening and just being there in it and with it, and giving it that honoring and that
Yeah.
space to be
Yep.
what it is without moving forward or getting over it or moving on.
100%. And we spoke to that before of that space to rest.
Yeah.
And I certainly found that myself when I stepped out of my long-term career. I thought next day I'm going to be going on and doing something like this. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. My body wants to sleep and
Oh,
sleep and sleep. And then it started to reflect. I'm like, oh, there's a lot to release here. You can't just drop it. But society says, and the work said, drop it, move on to the next. There's another project to do. So to give that, I 100% yes, to give that space and let it slowly find its way out of you.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
where in the kind of pre-conversation where I talked about like the great mystery of nature and like the nature's
Mm.
constellation and like the brilliance of all of this, like I really feel like we're all kind of like, you look up at the stars, right? You're like, oh, look at that star and look at that star, and I saw a shooting star, and but it's like, do you ever think that the universe looking at us just the very same way?
Mm. Yeah.
Right, like look
Yeah.
at that star, look at that star, look at,
Oh,
and
nice.
and we're
Yes.
not we're kind of like missing that part sometimes of, that we're part of all this, right? Like we're part of this
Yes.
mystery, we're part of this magnificence, and it doesn't happen by just constantly going. A lot of it is happening just by being the star in the sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
That star isn't
Good.
worried about like what it's going to do tomorrow or like what, impact it's going to make on the world.
Yeah.
It simply has to be itself, and we look up and admire it, and we look up and honor it and say, look at that bright star.
Yeah.
And what if we honored ourselves and each other that way? We're just like, just show up,
Totally. Just show
just
up.
show
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. One, even when we're either ebbing or flowing, but even when we're ebbing, we're still flowing.
Yeah,
We're still
yeah.
flowing. It's still
And
floating
even when
along.
we're
Yeah.
still flowing, like even when
Exactly.
we're resting and sleeping, and right, like if you look at a seed, I saw something really cool the other day on social media. It was like a seed in the dirt, and it was like a time lapse, and you could
Hmm.
see the different phases of like the roots, and then the
Nice. Yeah.
sprout, and then the opening of the flower. And it was like nobody knows what's happening there under the soil, but look at all that just happened before a sprout ever showed up at the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that happens when we rest, and that happens when we sit in the darkness. And that, I think, has been one of a huge leap of faith for me, is to sit with my shadow self. And
Hmm.
you probably gathered, those that are here joining us after this call or watching the playback, you probably gathered like there's been maybe some real traumas with this
Hmm.
15-year-old on and off the streets, and on her own. And there was a lot of trauma that I carried with me into my adult life as
Yeah.
I started to build a healthy and well being. um, it was very difficult to move forward from all of those traumas. So giving myself time to sit in the darkness of it all was also a huge leap of faith,
Hmm.
you know, because I knew that, sure, there's all the love and light, there, but it's like, love and light isn't gonna, there's love and light, and it can also be the source of a lot of like spiritual bypassing, right? When we're just
Sure.
constantly reaching for the light, we're forgetting what's beneath the soil,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like that sprout doesn't come up and just go love and light. It's got to sit in that freaking darkness for a little while before it ever sees the light,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? So I feel like that's been a big leap of faith too, is letting myself sit in the
Sit
darkness
in the
and
darkness.
paint black canvases and write dark things in my journal and
Hmm.
cry and grieve,
Yep.
over the childhood that I felt that I lost,
Yeah. 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 But there was always something, it sounds like there was always something there. I'm going to use my heart, but there was always
Yeah,
something there for you, drawing you and inspiring you. And can you speak? Because what I hear
absolutely.
is, yes, there's you had this trauma, but there was always a shimmer of light, at least, saying, no, there's something else.
Yeah, because that's the nature of things. And I think I let myself live to my nature.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
So it's like that's the nature of things, right? There's always light. Like just like that sprout is gonna pop its little head out of the dirt and go towards the light. I
Yeah.
was just doing the same old thing.
Yeah.
I was doing the same thing as nature because I am nature,
100%. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So even though I was in the mud and I was in the muck and I was in the dirt for so long, you know, it was like nature still knew what she was doing with me, you know,
Exactly.
she still
Exactly.
knew. And
Yeah.
and and I stayed sensitive.
Yes.
I never changed, even though sometimes it was really, really, really hard. I stayed sensitive,
Hmm. Yeah.
and just as I said that, she did a little
You
groan.
stretch.
Yes, I know you're sensitive too.
She's
Sensitive's
working on
better.
cue there. I get this. I can still be asleep and still feel when I need to
Yeah, oh
stretch
yeah,
for
yeah.
you.
She just did a big groan when I said, and I stayed sensitive. She's like, yeah.
I gotcha.
Um, yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Interesting. Um, let's go on to our no, actually, I've got one more thing here. You mentioned in that piece that you gave me at the beginning, that piece of wisdom, and you talked about failing systems and working nature.
Mm,
And I'd love for
yeah,
you to take just a few minutes and share your thoughts on that with us.
I'd love to. Thanks for that invitation. Yeah, so that's a great reminder of like a big part of what I feel like has been that driving force is through my sensitive eyes, even as a child, and my sensitive heart, I could feel the systems that were not working. Like these
Mm-hmm.
were not working systems; they were failing systems, and some of them I'll just kind of throw around here. We could go so much deeper into each one of them, but I'm just going to plant them here, and we'll allow them to be what they are and evoke whatever they evoke in those listening, and ourselves. But like one of them was religious systems,
Mm-hmm.
so the religious system that I watched and witnessed growing up, people would go to church and they would be all nice to each other, and we'd have to dress a certain way. And I hated wearing nylons, and my parents made me wear nylons,
Mm-hmm.
and, like all of these things. And then I would witness the same humans talking so badly about each other after church.
Hmm. Hmm.
like the gossip and so it really messed with me from a
Hmm.
sensitivity perspective because I was like, oh, like they're so nice to each other, but then they're so mean behind each other's backs.
Yeah.
So that was like a huge failing system, and I continue to witness the failing system in this particular religion when I had my biracial son baptized, and they wouldn't take him behind the altar. And it was interesting because they said all the boys, so for whatever reason, the boys get taken behind the altar. I guess because eventually they become altar boys in the eyes of the church.
Mm.
But they never took my son because his father was black.
Mm.
So we sat there, and afterwards there was, there, and even those things were leaps of faith because when I got into a
Mm.
biracial relationship,
Yeah.
I remember one of my grandmothers, and God bless her. I mean, she's a beautiful person and a warrior in her own right. But she said to me, will the baby be black?
Mm.
And it was a big concern. And it wasn't because she didn't love my husband. She loves my husband,
Mm.
but she was
Mm.
worried about what people would say, and particularly the church.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right? So there's a huge failing system for me, a
Yeah.
huge failing system.
Mm.
Um, but then we look at the working systems of nature, right? And we're like, hey, this is nature, right?
Yeah.
We are here. We're love. We're vessels for co-creation with the
Yeah.
divine. Like this is a working system when we allow it to be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
More failing systems is for me like the institutions in a lot of ways, the school systems, the hospitals, um, you know, uh, again,
Yep.
I want to just say this by also saying how grateful I am for these systems in a lot of ways,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but we are talking here about the parts of them that fail,
Yeah.
and but definitely like they serve us as well in many ways.
Yeah.
Um, but the way that, for example, there's 35 children in a room, and out of those 35 children, 8 of them are labeled with some kind of a disability, a learning disability, because maybe they just can't sit in a room with that many people for so long
Yeah.
and then also be asked to think and problem solve and be strategic, right?
Yeah.
When really they might just be like having a difficult enough time just being in that room with 35
Mm.
other students, and
Yeah.
maybe the lights are fluorescent lights and they're sensitive to that, or maybe the air conditioner's going and they're sensitive to that, or maybe the teacher has a lot of stress and they're
Yeah.
sensitive to that. So all of a sudden, like they're being labeled as having some kind of a disability when really they're being human.
Exactly.
Those
Exactly.
aren't really human
Sure.
conditions, right? Like they're institutional conditions. They're not who we are as nature.
Well, they're being nature. They're being, yeah, like the nature would
Yeah,
be sensitive to light or too much stimulation. Nature would be sensitive to that. It's been proven with plants and animals and everything.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
they are simply being nature.
Like what would
Yeah.
happen if we had, you know, natural light in the room instead of fluorescent lights? What would happen if we played some classical music and moved the desks further apart? What would happen if they
Mhm.
weren't on desks? They were on beanbag chairs. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, or sitting on the grass. Like, how would that change things, their
Yeah.
ability to learn, right?
Yeah.
So again, those systems serve us in many ways, but in many ways they can alter, who we are, because we're made to feel like, oh,
Sure.
you don't fit in, or you have a disability because you can't
Yeah.
acclimate to a very unhuman environment.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't be human. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
don't be your human self, be someone who can get straight A's and win track and field and perform,
Yeah.
but don't be human and don't embrace that part of yourself.
Yeah. So important. So
Yeah.
important. Yeah. Yeah. And then coping. What comes to me here is cope. Well, first, what comes to me is there's an authenticity versus an inauthenticity.
Hmm.
That's sort of the words that come in here is that
Yeah.
be inauthentic. And now in later in life, we have to learn to be. Why is it so hard to be authentic?
Yeah.
I ask myself that sometimes, like, why is this so hard?
Yeah.
because
Yeah, because we're
because
conditioned that way. We're
you've been
conditioned
taught
like not
not
to
to
be.
be.
Yeah,
Exactly, but why is it so hard? It should be as easy as a horse being authentic. So, and that's why we learn so well from them, is they're just like, or any animal, but they're like, I don't know anything else, so here I am. So, isn't that interesting? And wonderful that you're raising your son just to be authentic.
yeah.
And how many
It
people, how
hasn't been
many,
easy. I mean, it hasn't been easy.
can't
Like
imagine.
we've had to leave weddings because they're too loud, for him. We've had to wear big headphones at the movie theater. Like, it's been difficult to integrate into society, and still embrace our sensitivity and still
Hmm.
embrace gifts, right? So it's very challenging, but I do believe that we are, paving ways for others as well, because
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
seeing like, oh, like we're thriving, we're healthy, we're happy, we're
yeah.
joyful, and we're still sensitive.
Exactly. You're modeling it. Yeah,
Yeah, we're not
absolutely.
medicating it. We're not saying it's not the
Yeah,
way to be. We're like living it. And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not easy. I don't drive on the highway. Like there's certain things I just can't do,
yeah.
because I'm so sensitive, but there's a lot I can do, and there's a lot I do, and there's a lot I am. And that's what I embrace, is like who I am, and the nature of who I am, and
Of
who my
course.
son is, and who you are, and
Yeah,
who everybody is, because that's the
exactly.
gift, is in the dancing with the scarves, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
those are the gifts, like those are who we actually are. And most often, remembering who we are is remembering what held us when we were children.
yeah,
Where
yeah.
did we find that solace? Like where did we find that happiness, that joy, that bliss? Where did we find that? Let's look at
Mm-hmm.
our earliest memories of joy as a child,
Yeah,
you know
yeah, yeah.
before we were told that, oh, don't do that in front of your aunt and uncle, you look silly, or
Yep. Oh, I remember.
don't,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, don't say that, shush, be quiet.
yeah.
All the things that we were told by many times good, well-intentioned parents,
Yep.
but like Maya Angelou says, like the when we know better, we do better, right? So
Of course. Yeah,
that's kind of the path that I've been on for the past 20 years, since my health catalyst has
yeah,
been like, how can I like know better?
yeah,
How can I know better and remember who I actually am, so I can really
yeah,
enjoy this life.
yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just going to be a victim to this failing systems and to my sensitivities.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And then you actually become a failing system.
Yeah,
Like your
exactly.
body actually becomes a failing system. So,
and
okay,
and that's where we get a
August.
lot of the illnesses and stuff too, right? Like
Exactly.
dis-ease, and yeah, is when we shut
Exactly.
down to who we really are. And I know you mentioned the
Mhm.
horses and
Mhm.
how they get to be authentic, and in some of my work with horses, I have witnessed horses that are so ill because they can't be who they are.
No, no,
you know
exactly. Yeah. And that's a whole other hour
that's a
about
whole nother
it.
avenue, but it's the same with
Yeah,
us humans, right? When we're not
exactly.
allowing ourselves to be true to who we are,
Exactly.
it's it does manifest in many ways, and some of that could be physical illness and
Of
dis-ease.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be cognizant of our time here because I know you have something to
Yes,
get
my
to
ferry is on her
afterwards.
way.
So three pieces of wisdom, although I have 3 pages of wisdom written down here, but if you could bring us your
Mm.
3 nuggets of wisdom.
One would be to remember that everything starts in the dark. We grow from the darkness, right? um Even in the womb, like it's
Yep.
dark, before we ever are released into the earth or onto the planet, it's dark in there, right?
Mhm. Yep.
um so yeah, growth happens in the darkness or from the darkness.
Yep.
um we are nature.
Yep.
We are all nature. That's the working system,
Yep.
and we can bring that working system into our lives, into our homes, into our communities.
Yep.
And reminding ourselves that there is a great leap of faith in giving ourselves permission to rest.
Mhm. Yep. Well, those are beautiful. Those are beautiful. Um, so if you had or could give us, on those listening, a oh, see the weed whacker's coming now.
We're getting all the good stuff.
And then the leaf blower will come next. If you could give those listening a call to action, one
Hmm.
step that we could take into our day, into our week, and just what would that call to action be? Just one.
Um, Something that's coming to my heart and my mind right now is like to check in with yourself, um, and ask yourself what is guiding you.
Hmm, okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, thank you. I love talking to you. I love
I love
talking to
talking to you
anybody, but
too.
it's so much fun. So much. And there's just, I feel that we innately know this, but to hear it articulated
Yeah.
in the beautiful way that you articulate things, it it reminds us, it sort of pulls it out from the darkness that's within inside. I don't
Yeah.
mean darkness in a bad thing. It's just there's not much light
Yeah. And
inside of us.
darkness is not a bad thing at all. Yeah.
But it's just it pulls us out from those inner places in us and go,
Mm.
there it is. And it sort of goes, here's the light. Here it
Yeah.
is. So you such a and it's such a beautiful way, shine light for us.
Mm.
And that is inspirational.
Thank you,
And we
Linda.
love
And
that.
I'd love to just kind of just speak to the darkness piece,
Mhm.
and just share, in all this like personal work that I've done and working with others and everything. A big piece has been from like not looking at the darkness as like a bad thing, and just seeing it as part of what is. Like, look at nature, right? And look at nature, and that's where I get the working systems. That's where I get the wisdom that I need. Is I look outside of myself into nature, and then I see that back within.
Yeah.
Right. So I say, okay, nature, like, show me this, like, show me what it looks like to grieve, or show me what it looks like to sit in the darkness, and then finding that in myself,
Mm-hmm.
and like, look at the stars, right? Stars can't shine if the sky ain't dark. So, you know,
Yeah. Oh,
embrace it all.
nature's the perfect model for everything.
Oh, the working system.
Everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Everything. Oh,
Definitely. Thank you so much, Linda, for this
thank you.
opportunity.
Oh, thank you for making episode 11 just wonderful.
Yeah. And I love that it
And
was 11. Like, 11 is
yeah,
such a
well, 11's
cool,
a big number, isn't it?
yeah, it's such a cool number to
Very
have as
big
the
number.
episode. So thank
Yeah,
you for that.
have you
And
here.
thank you
Yeah.
to everyone who's joining us, either here now or I can't see who's here. So I think it's just us, Linda. But anyway, thank you to everyone who's
Absolutely.
taken the time to tune in here. And if you're still here listening
Yes,
or watching, thank you so much for
ab-
taking the long road with us. Um,
absolutely.
and all of the teachers that have been in my life, because I'm humbled, I'm humbled to have learned from the greatest, and most of them standing on four legs. So
Both of them stand on four legs. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Snickers. And
yes, thank you,
I
Snickers.
have met Snickers, and Snickers is really, you talk about that training and not having this and that, but Snickers is one of the most gentle souls.
Oh, he's so playful. Like, he's
But he's
gentle
so
and playful.
sweet.
He encompasses every part of what a being can be.
Yeah,
So there's times when he shows folks, and myself included, that hey, we need to have boundaries,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then there's times where he's like so soft and so gentle, and it's just like us, right? The nature within us, we encompass all those parts, and none of them are right and none of them are wrong. It just
Absolutely.
is, right?
Yeah.
And he's a really cool teacher to have, that's for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you. And
Thank
thank you
you.
all. We are going for our 12th one in June. And June we will have 4 episodes. We're gonna go all out in June and have 4 episodes. So our next one is June 6th to start with Lynn Carnes from the States. She's entitled hers called Dancing the Tightrope. And I can't wait for you to hear about her life story and what she brings to it, because we've had our pre-conversation and it's so exciting. So I can't wait for you. In fact, we had our pre-conversation and I think it was 2 hours later that we're like, maybe we should go.
Amazing.
Love those ones. Um, I'm going to have the summary and some links to what Fotini does and her work and anything we've talked about here. I'll have that up within the next day or so. And we are going to have another panel discussion the end of June. And we're calling that, since the last one was on death, dying, and grief, I felt we needed to balance things, although all important. This one's called On Life, Living, and Love. And we have an international panel that is, and I will announce our to be confirmed person tonight, but we have 3 wonderful women, one from Canada, one from Ireland, and one from Australia. So I'm super excited to bring that one to the table, so to speak. With that, Fotini, I would like to share, what you said earlier as a question for everybody. There's a call to action, but I offer your question here is, what held us as a child? Think about that. Reflect on that today for all those who are viewing. What's that memory of joy you had? What is your anchor in childhood? What is that memory that you have that's joyful? Be it that sensitivity, be it that daydream, be it that dancing with scarves around your head and nobody, just freely doing that. What's your anchor? And with
I
that,
love that.
I thank you all so much for being there. We are both so grateful to have you.
So grateful. And Linda, before we go,
Mhm.
I do have the Sacred Horse cards here.
Oh, lovely.
And
Excellent.
actually, one of them is Leap of Faith.
Yes, I saw that.
So I thought that I might share that card.
Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And yeah, so it's every card has a message, gift, and an affirmation. So this one's Leap of Faith, the message. The sacred horse is inviting you to take the leap that has been calling to your soul, grounded in the roots of your wisdom and guided by the faith in your heart. Though the outcome is unknown to you at this time, the element of trust is what you need to embody so that you can take this leap of faith without being held back by irrational fear. The gift. You may be blinded by a sense of security that has kept you bound to a routine that is diminishing your dreams. While this security brings a sense of safety to your mind, you are being asked to look beyond and into the realm of your dreams, where faith is the only security you need to fulfill your heart's desires. The affirmation, I leap towards my dreams.
Oh, that's beautiful. Awesome. And who did the artwork for your deck?
Yes, so the cards are illustrated by Diana Lancaster, who's an Indigenous artist out of, I believe, Arkansas. And we were collaborating since 2018 until we finally put into full production these cards, which are called the Sacred Horse cards. And
Right.
they have traveled all around the world. Awesome. And continue to make their way to folks everywhere. So,
and we will have a link up where you can get those with our summary. So awesome. That blessings all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.